Welcome to the EF Show, a podcast offered on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, where we discuss weather and how it is affecting us every day. From the common clouds to hurricanes and even tornadoes, we will cover it all. And today's topic being discussed is going to be extreme flooding affecting the central U.S. So I wanted to thank you all for listening in, and I won't get into too many details about the show yet. Just wanted to get this first podcast out there because this is something that is really affecting those of us here in the U.S. currently, and it's actually quite bad for our economy. So as many of you know, there have been a ton of rain showers in the past months in the central U.S., and it is just outrageous when you look at how much rain has actually fallen. And a quote from CNN, a total of 70 river gauges along the Mississippi River and its tributaries are experiencing major flooding right now, and another 104 are seeing moderate flooding as of the last data received. And it's crazy because if you're living near rivers in the central U.S., it's getting more and more dangerous every single day. With the amount of rain falling in other rivers in different parts of the country, if you live along the Mississippi, then your house may be flooded. And if it's not already, you might want to keep watching because it probably will be coming up. And the Arkansas River is already rising with near record and record levels and above 40 feet of water currently laying in some areas, according to local officials. And that is absolutely crazy. You haven't seen something like this in a long time. Like, we've all seen flooding in the low areas, but we're talking, this isn't like sunken down in depression in like the landforms, but this is actually just on flat ground. And it's affecting people like miles away from these rivers too. And it's honestly baffling about how much water is actually falling. You look and you get an inch of rain up in Montana, and by the time you get down to the southern part of the Mississippi River, you're with a foot of water already because you have to think about the water that's being contributed from other rivers and other streams that all flow into the Mississippi. And with the Ohio River, anytime it rains in Ohio or the Midwest, it will all drain into that. And so living along the Mississippi right now is possibly the worst situation you could possibly have. And there's some unknown effects that we'll be talking about a little bit later here that you think, oh yeah, it's just the Mississippi that has a problem right now. But no, it's actually further on out and even past where you would think water could be affected underground. It's crazy. We'll talk later in another episode about what climate scientists and meteorologists are working on to try to warn people of the odds of their homes being affected in case of the worst weather were to happen. And it's quite interesting technology that they're working on, and we'll get into a whole episode actually about some groundbreaking technology here coming up that will improve everyone's lives, including the economical differences and effects that just rain in general is having. And this year is looking to be record-breaking all on the Arkansas River. And this is something that we've never seen before, according to State Emergency Management spokeswoman Melody Daniel. Just in Missouri, 52 river gauges are in major flooding, and another 40 river gauges are experiencing moderate flooding as we speak. This flooding is particularly prevalent around St. Louis and its border with Illinois, and that's where it gets dangerous. You are now affecting major metros and areas where you don't see that much flooding, so people aren't prepared for it. And it's almost like getting snow in the South. It's just when it happens, it shuts down everything, and so it gets dangerous to not know about it. So being fully prepared for it is the best possible situation. And another area that people aren't expecting this much rainwater and everything and precipitation to be flooding them and actually ruining people's lives is out in the farm fields. So normally at this time of season, farmers would be starting to plant soybeans and corn, and they should already be in the ground. And this is actually the very end, as of today, June 15th, that they can be planting under like insurance. And then after that, it gets like their insurance has to take over and pay them because their fields are just kind of ruined. They don't have enough time to be able to grow all their crops and everything. And instead of planting right now, their fields are covered in water. It's like a lake out there. There's feet of water just laying, and a few quotes have said by the Pacific Standard that it's lakefront property, and it's almost as if the fields are washing away before their eyes. And with more rain in the forecast, it is actually getting worse and worse and worse. And you think about it long term, and these fields, they aren't just going to be affected for 1 year this season. They'll be affected for seasons to come, because you have to get the new soil and everything. If it's ruined, they're washing away. So you're ruining this perfect fertile soil that should be being able to be farmed on currently. But it's taking tolls, and it's crazy about how much rain has been falling in these areas. I mean, you went from a drought last year to just a complete mudslide this year. I mean, you can't even farm. There have been pictures on the internet, if you haven't seen them already, of multiple tractors getting stuck. And if you think about it, even if you try to farm, you're already losing tons of money. And then if your tractor gets stuck, there's a whole piece of machinery that you spent money on that's gone. And it's crazy because research shows that the increasingly difficult conditions farmers are experiencing during this recent years are at the mercy of more than weather. Extreme events like these are also linked to climate change. So everyone who thinks that it's just rain and that we're getting more rain, no, it's going along right along with that climate, with the CO2 emissions causing more like hotter summers and weird events to be happening where moisture generally collects. It's raining more. If you've ever looked at the generalized forecast over the past few years, there is a direct relation with the higher CO2 emissions and the amount of rain that is falling. And we'll get into a whole charts podcast later on. But the show is honestly that we're gonna have to dive deep into this climate change subject, so I get used to hearing about it. Because not only is it affecting us today, it's been going on for years. It's been happening for multiple years since like the whole industrial age started. Every CO2 emission that is being sent up, it's staying up there. It's really affecting everything that we know. And back in 2002, researchers estimated that the damage from climate change induced rainfall alone could be a total of $3 billion each year just for farmers. So that was back in 2002. Think about what it is now. In 2002, they were having some rain, but we have record-breaking, like 3 times the amount of rain that they got that season. So that number 3 billion could be more like 6 billion. And it's costing farmers tons of money, and these people that are living off of their crops, they're not getting that money. And if that's their only source of income, you're looking at tons of disasters going on. And ultimately, this is being passed down to the disaster relief programs. And agricultural aid for this year comes in at a price of $16 billion. And that's not to help the fields. That's just trying to help these families, according to the Pacific Standard. Cannot speak today. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Agricultural Statistics Service estimated that farmers have planted just 67% of the acreage planned for corn this year. In past years, they were already at 96% on average. Just think about that. 67% this year to 96% in past years. That's almost 30%. 30% of crops are not planted yet. So look at that number, $16 billion. Think about 30% of that. That's how much money we're losing. And it's really bad. And that percent translates to almost 40 million acres of corn not planted. And that's crazy. Michael N., an economist for the American Farm Bureau Federation, the country's largest agricultural lobbying group, says that with that 96% and 40 million acres, the insurance companies are having to pay out a ton of money for this. And you don't expect it, but even in areas where they're not getting much rain anymore, you're still being affected by that rain. The water on the ground, it travels on the ground. And if you are in the south, if it rains up north, even though you're not getting as much rain, you're going to be affected by that. And the southeast is currently under a little bit of a drought. And it's not much, but if you look at the drought monitors, Normally it's in the central part of the country, so Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, they are the ones that normally have these drought problems. But if you look at it, the areas that never have drought problems because all this rain is going to the middle of the country and not to the west and the east. And so you would think there's no rain, right, in the southeast and in Florida and in Georgia, Carolinas, but that rainwater that is in the central U.S. that is traveling through to the Mississippi, that's affecting the states that are right along the Mississippi. And the rain that is running from the northeast that happens to be running on creeks and rivers that are running south, that's not going to the Mississippi. Those are going to the south. So you're now being affected by it. So all that amount of rain has to do is shift a little bit further to the east, and then we have a national problem at that point. And that's why these states of emergencies are going to be updated. And they're talking about that many businesses are suffering too due to the flooding in parts of the country. And that's where, if you live in Oregon and Washington, you're not getting as much rain. It's not affecting your crops. And even if it is, it's not as bad as what it is in the central U.S. But if you are a shopkeeper and you're trying to restock on stuff and it's relying on these corn and wheat and stuff and bread, you're not getting that product. So not only is the agricultural industry losing money, so are food industries, any selling industries, whole companies, shipping companies, because there's nothing to ship. And so you're having this multiple industry disaster that is affecting many millions of people. And eventually, we're looking at a problem that can't be fixed. So this is going to go on to a later talk that we'll have about that some indoor farming that is really revolutionary with some software that allows everything to be perfect. But it's crazy that the entire harvest process and everyone involved are losing millions. And that affects everyone in the country, whether you live in California, whether you live in Michigan, up in Montana, down in Texas, and even over in Massachusetts. And so that leads to 3 essential questions that we have. And to summarize all this, will farmers be able to plant their crops? How will us as consumers be affected by this year's rising precipitation amounts? Will we be affected by the rain that is going to be flowing in the rivers or by our food? And when and where will crops still grow on time? Are there any at all that are still growing on time? And we'll come back and review and hopefully answer these questions in another episode. But hopefully everything can get to normal by then, and we can achieve that sense of normal, and these farmers can finally start farming, even if it is a little bit later. They're gonna have to farm, and they're gonna try to find ways. I mean, everything comes through, and the economy is suffering massive losses here in the 2019 harvest. So we'll have to come back later on in maybe the early fall and revisit the before and after of the direct effects on what is happening whenever weather takes out an entire industry. So yeah, I wanted to thank you so much for listening to the EF Show, and stay tuned in on our Twitter and Instagram. The link is in the description below for those, and we'll also put the links and updates in the Podbean, YouTube, and a few others that we have. All of those links will be at the homepage of my YouTube or the homepage of Podbean, and you can access all those. Instagram is the place where I will post everything first. You can check out the stories and just stay there. Just be watching to stay posted, and hopefully everyone has a safe and good day. And remember, if you are ever on the road and there is a ton of water, just turn around, don't drown, because you don't want to be that one person on the news who gets their car flipped upside down in the water. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned.